for any grants between the City of West Plains and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, providing for capital, operating, and/or marketing assistance comprised of federal funds to be expended for commission-approved transit projects. Make a motion that Bill 4682 become ordinance 4682, second reading.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Mallory?
Bill 4682, become ordinance 4682, second reading. Carter is absent. Pavlik?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Earl?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes. Bill 1137 to become Resolution 1137, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute on behalf of the City of West Plains an agreement with Samuel L. Anselm relating to working conditions and other matters concerning his employment as city administrator of the City of West Plains, prescribing the form and content of said agreement and fixing the time of this resolution shall become effective. Make a motion, Bill 1147 become Resolution 1147.
37.
137, 1137.
1137.
1137.
Second.
Second.
Just add it in. If you all have any comments or questions, be careful, he's here.
Yeah.
Second.
Anything, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You got a contract.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Okay.
Next item for the work session is the CY22 City and Utility Budget.
With the work sessions we have, we will be entertaining questions only from council to the appropriate staff member. At this point in time, that is an appropriate thing to do.
Well, according to charter, we're supposed to let the media know and post it on our website, which we were able to do it April Fool's Day. So kind of ironic, but we posted it on our website, April 1st, and then allow 2 weeks for the citizens and the public to review that, then a public comment period. So our goal is to have the first reading April 15th, and before that reading, we'll have a public comment session. So if anybody does have questions, can ask at that time.
Okay.
I want to add,
Let me get started. You ladies did a yeoman's job getting this put together. Really did. I think that
of all the compliments you could get, I know there's 1 hour on weekends. I think you did a great job, we'll find out.
Oh, and we did a high-level budget, and Sherry and Yvonne, along with the directors, it was very much a team effort, and they did a great job. Depending on your questions, we may not be able to answer tonight, and we'll just have to basically get back to you.
Right, this is a high-level review. It's not going into the depths at this point in time. They'll have time to study on that before next week.
Are we ready?
Good.
All right. Thanks for having us. We're gonna look at FY22, the first few pages, and everything that's up here is basically in your books, okay? I'm gonna have a few that's not, but mostly everything is. So this is a list of the projects that we have completed so far this year in FY21. These are the projects that were started in FY22 or 21, and they're still in progress. Most of the expense is probably in FY21, but maybe the work itself is not completed, okay? Your purple section at the top is just, that's a maintenance project. Those are things that are continuous to be done. And then your yellow is things that we possibly will do, like your all-inclusive park. Those things are all pending to come up in the future. And then, of course, the bottom part is scheduled for either this upcoming year or the next year in 23, okay? So the first thing you'll find is, and again, we did just a budget summary. The first one, city revenues, and expenses. So let me explain a little bit about that first one. Whenever we start out, the year for April 20, this last Monday, or whatever the day that was, we had unrestricted cash on hand, $3,925,702 on the city side, okay? We are projecting for this upcoming year a net loss of $1.283 million, and we are ending with a projected of 2.642. That's where we get the 91 days cash on hand for the FY22 year, okay? Then it goes down into your capital projects expenditures. We will be completing the splash pad, the civic center. We're going to do the EFS and the guttering, and then new theater lighting, which you guys have already approved, but because it can't be installed until, I think it's April 22nd, is that right? It had to move over to this year, the expense, because we don't have an invoice on it, obviously. And then the pool lighting, you haven't approved yet, but it's, or they did approve
They
the
have
pool
approved
lighting.
it,
We
but
just, again, we don't have
it
it,
won't
the
be
work
installed.
completed, so the expense has to come into this year. We have budgeted on the city side. As you know, our fleet, our vehicles are in terrible shape. We haven't bought any vehicles in several years. So we have currently about 800,000 in new vehicles to start rotating out. And you actually, a couple of pages over, I think it's page 4, you actually have a list of those vehicles that that would be bought and then what they replace.
It's actually page 6.
Is it 6? Okay, thanks, Tom. And then, of course, we've talked a lot about the overpass. Well, the CDBG funding, that's the flood buyouts. We have about $5 million in that. We'll start that this year. And then the detention basins, I think we're scheduled to do, am I right, Emily, 2 this year? Or we're gonna do 1 this year. Okay. And then we have approximately, 1.25 million budgeted for the medical district and then the governor's cost share is part of that. And then, as you know, we got the okay to do our overpass, and we almost have everything collected there except the EDA, which has promised us $2 million.
Yeah, last week, we received word that CDBG is providing us $2.5 million. All indications was, once that happened, EDA will probably give us word that we'll get the $2 million from them. So we hope we hear soon, and that will complete the funding for the railroad overpass.
And then in your utilities, the utility revenues are projected to be $23 million, with the indirect and the direct expenses, operating expenses being $25 million. There's also capital improvements included, and that's a proposed $5.84 million. You take out the depreciation, and the proposed cash expenditures for utility is $28 million. They're looking at, that will decrease their budget 5.5, which leaves right now, starting in April of 20, we have that $14,872,000. If we do the $5 million, the end of next, or, March of 20, 2023, which is the end of this fiscal year, we're gonna end up with $9,302,000. That's gonna give us 118 days cash on hand for the utilities, which is lower than we normally have. But in FY '21 and scheduled for this year, we've spent a lot, we've done some really big projects. And I'll give you some overviews of those
And
here.
in the April, or at the end of February, actual cash on hand, utilities was 254 days cash on hand. And then with the spending down, and this also leads into the part of the integrated plan as we go forth and, with the community and deciding what's the best course of action do for the next 10, 20 years.
And you can see out of that 5.8, there's the highlights are 1.5 for the solar farm, $1 million for AMI meter purchases, $750,000 for the sanitary sewer evaluation study and the GIS upgrade, and then $425,000 for the SCADA, and then $290,000 for a new sanitation truck and a backhoe. Again, this is just some highlights of what we'll be doing. Pretty much the same thing that we just went through. These are your vehicle lists, and now this is city side, and then there's the utility side. And we tried to put on there what they were replacing, and then kind of maybe some mileage, so you kind of had an idea why they needed to be replaced. I mean, when you had a 1987 with 375,000 miles on it, it might be time to replace it. Okay.
So those are the lists, and if you have any specific questions, the directors are here where they can answer for any vehicle you want.
So the question that came up a couple, 3 weeks ago, whether or not, or why we direct purchased versus leased, leased the vehicles. What came of that investigation or that situation?
We paid for the 10 police cars. We did not.
And what was the agreement? How are we supposed to have acquired them?
We couldn't find any paperwork that stated one way or the other. So, but they did, we found where they were paid for.
So the concern, paying for versus leased, that question has been laid aside?
Yes.
No concern now at this point?
No,
Well, there's a concern, but we've moved on
yeah. Because we,
with the current budget.
we found the invoices where you guys approved them through council, and then we also found the invoices where they were paid for, so we know that
So
they're all.
did the council approve them to be leased or approve to be outright bought?
The wording doesn't say. So, and in Jeff's bid, it didn't say. We looked at both pieces and we couldn't find anything. Just kind of so you know what we did before we go on to this slide, what we did in, FY '21 on the utility side to have spent down that amount of money. We did the Southern Hill, we started the Southern Hill substation. Between the site development, the transmission line, material procurement, and the right-of-ways, we spent $2.2 million there. The solar farm so far, we've spent $250,000 on. AMI metering, we've spent $300,000 on. And then on the fiber side of it, we've spent $216,000. And then on the water meters for the AMI, we've spent $286,000. We had to get some variable frequency drives. I don't know if you guys remember that on the water treatment piece of it. That was $150,000. We also we had Visi Sewer here that flushed our lines and did some upgrades that way. That was $130,000. And then on the wastewater treatment plant, there was a bar screen and a compactor that was purchased and installed. and that was $162,000. So that was your big expenses for FY '21, on the utility side. Any questions on that before I move on? So what you're gonna see behind your city tab is every department, the revenues that it brings in, and the expenses. These are all unrestricted departments, except these two right here. They are restricted, but we felt like we needed to include them so that there wasn't a question that they aren't budgeted. And with that, you have this unrestricted cash balance. We had $3,925,000. We had a net loss of 1.283 this year. Unrestricted cash, this is going for FY '22. And then unrestricted cash balance will end up with 2.642, all things equal, and that will give us 91.74 days on hand. Now, I will tell you, this does include a 3% COLA for the employees. And we can take that out or we can leave it in. But I wanted to make a note so you knew what's in there. Any questions on that part?
As you know, we are recommending keeping it in, unless council directs us otherwise.
The projection for general funds, that's just based on historical
Yes.
sales tax return. So
Yes.
the
And
improvements that's going on in
We-
town and in the,
We did figure
Tournament
1.5% growth in
Okay.
that.
we did,
you know,
on sales tax.
here in 2 weeks when that tournament hits,
Yeah.
that's $2 million coming into the,
And with the volleyball, West
Yeah.
Plains winning,
yeah,
that tournament just became even more, vital.
yeah.
I will tell you that Yvonne and I both, agreed that we did this conservatively,
That's great. Yeah.
because we did not want to overstate. Our sales taxes, even through COVID, has stayed basically the same. But with Tractor Supply, Harbor Freight, Birch Outlet, and then of course the volleyball tournament, we felt like we were comfortable. Tom felt like he was comfortable with raising that, so we added a 1.5% onto that sales tax.
That sounds
And
good.
we also added that because anything that's on sales tax will also affect the transportation or the capital tax, so we did that also.
Seems like a good conservative.
And that number's still conservative.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we didn't want to overstate something.
Now, target on unrestricted cash, ultimately, anything over 85 days, right? Isn't that what
We try to keep, around 90 days
Yeah.
cash on hand. And we fluctuated anywhere from 80 to 90 and even greater. But we try not to go below 85 or 80.
yeah, that's,
And, last Thursday, on the 1st, Andy Marmaget did come down. Tom and I and Yvonne spent most of the day with him, just making sure that our numbers were right and we were doing this, that we weren't missing something that possibly we would have overlooked. And, he was very comfortable with what we were doing as far as, our numbers. So, on your next page,
And may I, Sherry? And from Andy's viewpoint, he made the statement that from the audit standpoint, they look at 3 months for city and utilities. We normally do 6 months for utilities, but from audit, he says they look at 3. So 90 days for city, 90 days for utility.
so your next sheet just shows what we project as our revenues for FY '22 on unrestricted cash. And then our total operating expense unrestricted, 10 million. Then we end up with a decrease of that 1.263 that we just talked about. Now, one thing Tom pointed out to us earlier, the transportation tax is restricted, as you guys know. We didn't get the capital on there, because we also get 1.7 in capital also. The reason we didn't is we didn't have time to dig through the expense piece. Because some of that stuff can go to capital and some of it can go to transportation tax. So we estimate, we have another 1.2 approximately on top of that 1.4. We just don't know which one it'll come out of, if it'll come out of capital or if it'll come out of transportation.
Most of it that's on the list will come out of capital, but
Yeah, as best we, but we just ran out of time and didn't have time to really delve into that to see where we needed to put that.
Help me understand this. On part of our capital improvement tax goes to transportation?
No, there actually, Johnny, should be another column over here that would say capital, and it would be another 1.7.
Johnny, we have a 1 cent general sales, a half cent capital, half cent transportation.
Half-cent capital is what's going to be going away next year.
Well,
We hope.
it expires at the end of 2023. And so we gotta, but the plan is take it to the vote April 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, we just forgot, we failed to include capital as a count.
So what you
And
would.
so that's what she's pointing out.
Yeah, we would have another column here that would have that 1.7, and then as far as the expenses, it would be like 1.2. That's what we know, we have another 1.2 in expenses.
Right, because we're supposed to tell the public when we do our, it's called the budget or the capital program, or capital plan, we're supposed to identify where the resources are to pay for those line item costs. And at this point, we don't have that included.
That's exactly right.
So between now and the next couple of weeks,
Yes.
that's going to be merged in?
We'll put it together,
Okay, very good.
yeah.
You got a tentative idea by the list of projects, we just gotta merge them a little more.
Like the ephes and the guttering at,
What is the EFS? Help me out.
that's, I won't say it right, but it's exterior,
Emily?
Basically, Johnny, it's the part that looks like stucco above the brick at the civic center.
Okay,
It's water resistant and synthetic.
not stain resistant.
It's about,
It's about 11 years past.
I would say it's also not supposed to last 30 years.
Right.
It's been like,
And my understanding is, it doesn't do you any good to replace one without replacing the other. Is that correct? Am I saying that right, Emily? They kind of go hand in hand. Any questions on that? Apologize for leaving that off, but I didn't realize it till Tom told us. The next sheet, just again, shows you what your restricted cash is, unrestricted cash, what our totals are, and then what we have budgeted as far as revenue and expenses, and then how we feel like we're gonna end up, at the end of the year in March of 31 of 2022. Any questions on the city side? There are some pie charts. You'll be able to see, this tells you, where the revenue comes in. Obviously, tax revenues is our largest. And then this one will give you where our city expenses are. And each one of those will be directed to a line item within the budget. And, they'll show you kind of an idea. Some people like to see it like that rather than on paper. Any questions? Okay, let's move on to utilities. On the utility side, we're projecting that our revenues will be 23 million and our expenses will be 25 million. Now, this is unrestricted. We do want to note the sanitation department, refuse specifically, is asking to raise their residential and their commercial, pickup fees, okay? The residentials would bring in about 180,000 increase, and the commercials 114,000. And those are included in these revenues. So if you decide you don't want to raise the rates, then we'll take those back out. And what that does, let's see here. Will tell you, that raises your residential, right now it's 1050, and it would go to 13. And your commercial rate would go from 1520 to 1880.
When was the last time those were raised?
2013.
And again, we've included those in the revenue, but we can pull them out.
Well, and we'll probably have a more formal recommendation on the 15th, right, Jeff?
And then also, this does include, again, a 3% COLA for the employees at an approximate $104,000 for the utility side. Any questions on that one?
How do you, what's the city's normal process of determining what range of refuge cost there is? I know, you know, the state has recommendations for sewer and water for a minimum to be eligible for loans and such. Is there the same kind of a scale for picking up waste that cities use?
Go ahead, Jeff.
So what we do typically, Johnny, is that we take our rate, we compare it to other entities that are in the area, and then we base it off of that. Trash Wagon Express is $22 a month. Correct, Emily? And we're wanting to raise it to 13. Rolla's rates, as far as their commercial pickup, which that's what we need to go off of, is a comparable city. Yes, more in line with what we're trying to do as far as a proposal. So we're not really, we don't feel like, as a matter of fact, we feel like that we're shooting under what everybody else is. So, but that's what we typically do, and then we take into consideration our operating expenses, and then bounce that back off of what the comparables look like. So to make sure we're within the means.
So do our current revenues cover cost of vehicles, operations, depreciation, manpower, all that? Does it cover that, or are we making any kind of a?
Look up there,
On the refuge,
914 is the one.
we're making 67,000 on refuge.
With the proposed rate increase.
And that is, yes, that is with the proposed, and
So
that
the
is
answer
the
is no.
department that we are, purchasing a roll-off truck in, which is $165,000. That's the one that's like a 1987 that we need to fix.
So is this budget including that increase?
Yes. sir.
Yes, it does.
That would leave a surplus of about $305,000 is what you've got budgeted.
On refuge
The surplus
disposal.
is 67,000.
Yeah.
No, I've got reason.
You're looking at 915.
That refuge disposal, so that's taking it from here to our bill. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
We need to have our departments cover themselves.
Yeah.
On the refuse disposal, that includes also what we charge other cities to haul theirs to the
That's
our
the,
bill.
yes, sir. That's the tipping fees up there. That's what you're getting out.
We increased that just recently too, did we?
We did.
Okay.
But the but to that, Mike, is that he looks at that about every 2 years.
Yeah.
So we did do a change on that part of that. We haven't done a rate change on our local, inside city limits, residential and commercial, since 2013.
Okay. All right. Next slide. This is gonna tell you how our days on hand are budgeted. So we've got revenues projected to be 23 million. Our direct operating expense is 22 million. Our indirect operating expenses, 2.2. So our proposed expenses for FY '22 is 25 million. And then we have capital expenditures of 5,800,000. Then you add back that depreciation or subtract it out, actually. So you end up with a cash expense of 28,657,402. So that leaves us with a deficit of 5,570,000. We have on hand, as of February 28th, 14,872,941. You take our net loss away from it, that 5.5, and on 3/31, we're projecting our cash will be 9,302,000. That leaves us with 118,408 days on hand. Now, for that FY '22 of that 5 million, we have to upgrade the electric SCADA and the sewer SCADA and the water treatment SCADA, which ends up being about 425,000, okay? The solar farm, we got 1.5 million that we'll spend this year. Southern Hills improvements, 50,000, and I believe that's actually in the Southern Hills Shopping Center, right?
Yes.
And then,
That's just electric.
right. And then AMI meter purchases, 750. Jeff has asked for an SUV in the electric department. We have 7 young men who are going to either electric apprenticeships or water and sewer apprenticeships. And so when they go, it would be nice to take one vehicle. And then generator upgrade, we've got 410,000. New line to the solar farm for the fiber is 100,000. AMI meters for the water is 300,000. Water treatment, they need 135,000 for generators for the main wells. And then the sewer, they're gonna do a sanitary sewer evaluation study and a GIS upgrade, which is 750,000.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes.
Council, I'd like for you to keep in mind that that is a 3-year project. Will be phase 1 of 3 on that sanitary sewer evaluation study. We originally thought we were gonna try to bite it off in 2 years, but since we incurred the cost of the GIS upgrade also, we're gonna do it over a 3-year period. And plus, we didn't think that we could bite off half the town in 1 year.
And then we've got 165,000 for the roll-off truck, and then they need a new backhoe at the transfer station, which does load the big trucks. So it's 125,000, and then, we need a SUV for the IT guys to go around town and do their thing. Questions on that?
What's the GIS?
That's our
Actually gonna be-
mapping system.
Okay.
So that will map that'll map your water lines, your sewer lines, your electric lines, everything.
We're doing that in-house.
Yes.
We're maintaining it, what we're doing, but every time we do a major upgrade, we end up having to do it out of house, and that's what this study, the sanitary sewer evaluation study, will have that component upgraded. We'll upgrade the entire thing, so at one time. There's too many updates, there'll be too many updates for us to in-house handle.
Any other? So your next sheet, that just breaks it down by our account numbers, our GL account numbers, for the capital improvements. Just so you can see where all of it goes. And this will include, like, already some of the things that we just talked about. You know, this is just more of a breakdown on some of this, you know, on everything. That's where we get our 5.8 million. And then your last 2 slides, again, like we did, is this tells you where our utility revenue comes in. And this is where it tells us where we spend it. I know this is a lot that we've thrown at you, so, Yvonne and I's goal is for you guys to look through this, and then whatever questions that you don't have right now, to just be sure and get them to us, and then we will, make sure that we get those answered for you.
And council, I'd like to note, what we did not include in here is we are projected to receive $2.5 million from the Relief Act. We're still waiting for more guidance on that from, basically the Treasury Department. Right now, it's kind of referred to, you could spend more towards water and sewer. But we're still waiting on guidance, and we start discussion with directors on priorities tomorrow. We'll make sure Sam's included, but we want to give council recommendation how to go forward for that 2.5 million. We do not have that in here yet. I would like to note on page 3, towards the bottom, you got relocating bus stops, you got security of City Hall, warehouse, campus improvements. We don't have room to grow anymore at City Hall. Our warehouse is overloaded, and with all the projects going on, we need to find a different plan. So that could be part of this looking at design of warehouse of that 2.5 million. Those are discussions we're gonna have. But at some point, we need to move forward with something for the city.
Do we know if that money is gonna be time-bound, where it has to be spent within?
Emily listened to a webinar. I couldn't be there. It never said, but we're projecting that you probably have to spend it by the end of this year. But we're not sure on that yet.
We should be hearing soon though on follow-up, information. They're hosting different webinars as they begin to get information. Right now, the real holdup on guidance is because they're trying to get everything sorted out with the IRS for right now this year's tax season. So they're expecting in the next few weeks that they should have additional guidance on exactly what you can spend, and when you'll.
And I have talked to Andy Marmache and Joy Howard, and they both say if we wanted to do water storage or something like that, they think it'll apply from what they've heard. We are just waiting for more information.
Possibly use it for the replacement of water towers also.
Possibly, yes.
When we start looking at replacing the water towers, I was in Ohio. They had several city water towers underneath it. I mean, you got dead space there. They had a fire station underneath the water tower. That's another way, not saying we need more fire stations, but that'd be like another storage area, maybe a warehouse, and then just, little utilization. Yeah, utilization of that space, dead space anyway.
I just wanted to make sure, council, we did not include this in here yet.
Okay.
Because we just don't know. But every indication is we're gonna receive that money. We just gotta figure out how to prioritize it.
Any other questions? Again, we would like for you to look at that, and if there's other questions, please don't hesitate to email me, Tom, Yvonne, any of us, and get them answered for you.
Like I said earlier, our goal is to have the first reading on the 15th with a public meeting beforehand. If we need to sit down with you and discuss further, we'd be glad to. Or if I would ask, if possible, questions by the end of Monday on the 12th. Just depends if we have to make adjustments, we can do it before that first reading.
Are we gonna get a line item budget?
We can provide that to you if you want.
It's just lengthy, so we didn't want to throw it in here.
Yeah, no, I would like to talk about that.
Okay.
All I have, Mayor.
Any questions, anything else? You besides line item budget, any other information we need to provide?
Anything else come for Tom? We're adjourned.